Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the TT Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness-based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. Welcome to September. September is so full of awareness days. I really had a difficult time figuring out what I wanted to cover this month. But I ultimately decided we're going to be looking at National Alcohol and Drug Addiction Recovery Month, National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month, Alopecia Awareness Month, and Self Awareness Month. So we're going to get into it today because I want to stay on topic. You know, I get all excited when it's a new month and there's so much to talk about. So let's get into it. Sacrificing or self awareness. So you may not even be aware of all of the potential days in this month that are highlighted for our growth and development. But September 13th is actually set aside for National Positive Thinking Day. And I know you're like, we need a day to think positively. We most certainly do, because as you all know, those automatic negative thoughts, they are going to show up. They are going to have people with them. They work overtime. They don't have to take any breaks at all. And they are going to make sure that they are consistently on that clock. And so we have to be intentional about our positive thinking. So where I got I guess I'll say the inspiration for today's episode. I have been wanting to see Inside Out too since it came out. I just couldn't get it figured out. But this weekend, my sister and I went. And when I tell you there's always a good word in a cartoon for you. And so in this particular movie, I'm not going to give away all the good spoilers. Some of you may have already seen it, and no, you do not have to have children to go and see it. It is a movie, the first one I recommend frequently for my clients because it just really makes it plain, if you will, in terms of how we deal with our emotions or don't deal with them. So, how aware we are of what we are feeling and how those feelings affect how we think and how we behave. And so, in this particular movie, the second of the Inside Out series, we are introduced to some new emotions because Riley is going through puberty. Some of you may remember that puberty is its own special time in your life that is filled with a lot of range of emotions, but also being able to manage them in effective ways, being aware of how you're even affected by your emotions, being aware of what those emotions are can be a task unto itself as you're trying to just navigate figuring out how to be present with yourself, much less with other people. But we're introduced to anxiety. And anxiety, as anxiety does, can really take over. And so sometimes when we are dealing with higher levels of anxiety, it can really affect our awareness about ourselves. But also, what we learn in this movie is the importance of experiences that we have, those that shape us, those that we may perceive to be positive, and those we may be that we may perceive to be negative, and what we do, how we approach those, and what we do with them when we experience them can shape our value system. So I wanted to get into this episode. I'm just going to be honest with you all. I've been frankly a wee bit disappointed in the conversations about men and women from men and women. We have gotten to a place where there's a lot of tenuous, stressful conversations about us when we're in our selective group. So, men talking with other men about women, and women talking with other women about men has just grown to a place where it doesn't seem very loving and kind to me, but it also reflects that we are being influenced by people who have had, I'll say it this way, who have had negative experiences. And because of their negative experiences, they are now trying to shape others based on their own experiences without a full understanding of themselves and allowing other people to have a full understanding of themselves. Come here, self awareness. So I want to talk a little bit today about what self awareness is. Self awareness is your understanding of you. It is influenced by a variety of things. Excuse me, my allergies are acting up as this weather changes. Um, it is influenced by your value system. It is influenced by your culture. It is influenced by your family of origin. It is influenced by your education. It is influenced by your early relationships with people outside of your family of origin. So, as you begin to experience teachers, as you begin to experience peers, as you begin to get involved in organizations, as you begin to create your identity, this is where your self awareness comes from. And as we go back to the thoughts and why thinking is so important, whatever you think, so shall you be. And so we've had a lot of conversations over the years with ourselves, or hopefully we have, about who am I? Am I all that I say I am? Am I all that I can be? Those are the fundamental three questions I frequently ask people in therapy. But also, what do I want? And how am I going to reach those goals of what it is that I want? How do I ensure that it's coming from a healthy place and it is not coming from a desire to be liked by people, to be loved by people, to be affirmed by people? It is not coming from a place of not wanting to hurt people's feelings or being responsible for people. It is not coming from a place of, if I don't do what people want me to do, um, then I'm going to be alone. I'm not going to have friends. I'm not going to be accepted. I won't be able to have a career. And right, all of these things can affect us. I talk about a good bit those wellness areas: the social, the emotional, the spiritual, the financial, the career, the environmental. And what ends up happening is I will make decisions about my wellness areas and how I want to invest in them and what's important in terms of priorities in them based on whatever I believe, whatever my thoughts are, whatever I've been told sometimes, or what I've seen maybe reinforced and valued around me. Those will be the tenets upon which I build the foundation of those wellness areas. And so I want to spend a little time talking about social, because as I started off by saying, just a wee bit disappointed in how sometimes I see men and women talking to each other or talking about each other in spaces. And I know if you all have been following the news, you have seen a couple of different things come up. One, you have seen some articles about the rise in lonely single men. Then you have probably equally as much seen some articles or some heard some podcasts or had some conversations about women choosing peace and wanting to travel and not choosing marriage, some not choosing children. And so either one of those has been perceived, I will say, in negative ways. So the rise of the lonely men is coming from this space of men are not knowing how to treat women with respect and dignity in their dating relationships. They're wanting to have multiple relationships. They're not being honest, right? Like all of the negative kind of stereotypes of men. And because of how you're treating women, they are choosing not to be involved with you. Or you have not treated your spouse very well over the years, and now you've slowed down for whatever reason. For some people it may be I finally say, well, now I'm ready to be kind of invested. Those playboy days are gone, and so I want to be present. For some people it's now my physical health has changed, and so I'm needing more of the caregiver. And so a lot of women are under the perception that, okay, you're only choosing to show up in your marriage now, or you're only choosing to show up in a relationship now because your options are no longer promising. So you don't have other choices out there. You can't be a player anymore because now you're older and people aren't looking at you in that way. Or now you're not in a position financially to be able to do that, because you have, to look toward retirement now. So you got to think about some other things. Money needs to go in different directions, or maybe your children are older and you're trying to help them get on their feet, get started in their lives, first homes, paying for college or whatever. Or you're not in good health. right? And so what the women are saying is like none of that is attractive to me. Like I don't want to be your leftovers, your choice after you went out and had your fun, and now you're coming because you want somebody to take care of you. So again, these are the conversations that now we're having with each other. And on the other end of the spectrum is this conversation for women about, oh, like you all are so concerned about your peace and your well being, that you're selfish, you don't know how to be in relationships with people. This is why men are choosing to date women who are not raised in the United States, because those of you that were raised here, you have a different perspective. You don't know how to show up and be present for your partners. You're going to be lonely. I even heard a pastor say you're going to end up with two sexually transmitted infections and like seven cats or something like that. So there is these extremes that we painted in terms of what it looks like to be, particularly in your 30s and your 40s. I've seen people say to women, like, you're looking for this partner that doesn't exist. You don't even look the same anymore. You're no longer in your 20s when everything was tight and right, and so you don't have the right to now be expecting people to show up and be present for you in all of these ways that are not realistic. When you're in your 30s and 40s, you essentially ought to be happy for what you can get. If somebody is willing to pay some bills and show up at least half the time, then you ought to jump right on that. For men, it is you need to get the younger girls, you need to get involved with them because they haven't been influenced as much negatively. But you also may really need to think about if you even want to date again somebody that's here. So uh, this is leading me to this topic of self awareness. So I want to just leave a few things with you. One, self awareness is about who you are, not who people want you to be, not who people have defined you as, not who a stereotype says you are, not who a group of people who don't even know you and are making assumptions about you says who you are. Self awareness is about how you show up for yourself, how you show up for other people. You are the expert on you. It is important when you are engaging in self awareness that you're honest with yourself about who you are, that you don't tell yourself you're something you want to be, but as the young people say, don't have receipts to back up. I may say that I'm a great catch in relationships, but let me actually break down how I show up to be in relationships. That's really going to be the defining factors. How do I behave when someone is in my presence versus when someone is not in my presence? When I know I'm being watched versus when I know I'm not being watched? Is my behavior still the same? Am I who I say I am across the board with everyone, or does that change? I read an article the other day about Tupac Shakur, and someone described him as a chameleon. They said he would be different people depending on who was around him and what he felt like he needed to do in order to be able to achieve his goal. And some of us are engaging like that at work, in our relationships with other people, that we are showing up and we're being different people. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that a lot of us code switch when I'm in a professional environment. I might be a little bit different in how I speak with people, and I'm more considerate about how I say things and how I address people, particularly if I'm in leadership. I'm not talking about those professional skills of being able to have conflict resolution and effective communication, but what I'm really talking about is your value system. Does that change? That when you're around different people, then it looks like you value different things, right? Not that they are dormant and they don't come out with particular groups of people just because they haven't had a chance to, not because they're not present. They would be present if we talked about it or if a situation came up. But I'm talking about like literally you're reinventing yourself. You are creating a character, if you will, because you know that character will be received in the way that you want to be received. And that is the being misleading. That's not being honest, right? And so that's that lack of a self-awareness, or you're intentionally trying to deceive, right? Self-awareness is about you showing up and being consistent in your presence. Self-awareness is about you having an objective that's clear and true and consistent across time, right? And so that self-awareness piece is very important when you're talking about being in dating relationships. However you choose to define yourself and choose to define what it is you want in relationships, That is the part that needs to be consistent, your negotiables versus your non negotiables. And sometimes we're not consistent in that because we don't truly know who we are. Sometimes we're ashamed of who we are and we feel like that will be rejected and that won't be received well. Sometimes we are talking to people and we are thinking that this person knows more about us than we know about ourselves. Sometimes we're asking other people to tell us who we are. We're looking for groups of people to affirm who we are. We're looking to take on characteristics that we think will be accepted by the people that are in said groups. And so that is when we lack not only self awareness, but then we're also starting to lack integrity. Am I picking out people who I simply know are going to agree with me so that I can say the same types of things and have them validated, not actually being honest with myself and not having integrity with myself? Because the first person you need to be true to is you. And is it possibly that I am doing things for other people that I don't really enjoy? Maybe because I don't know who I am. It is amazing to me when I ask people what their interests are and they tell me they don't really know. What are your hobbies? What are the things that you do for your self care? What are the things that you do to recharge, to rejuvenate? What are the things that you do to pour into yourself? And people will struggle with that because they're not really sure. Like they know that they have patterns that they engage in. Well, like, yeah, come on, man. I may get a drink or I may binge watch some shows or I'll read a book or get on social media and kind of scroll, but I can't really tell you what I'm doing to pour inside of me, and that is because I lack the awareness about myself to understand what I need. You cannot show up and be present in any relationship if you don't know who you are. And it's important for you to be okay with who that person is. That person may want to date. They may not want to date. That person may want to be in a committed relationship. That person may want to be in non committed, but again, consensual, non monogamous relationships. So that is my self-awareness. That is who I am. That is what I want. Those are my goals. That's what I desire. That's the space I want to be in. That's the space that gives me the ability to be able to take care of myself the best, to be able to give me my wellness. Then that's the person that needs to show up. And that's the person that needs to be communicating with other people so they can make decisions about whether or not they want to navigate spaces with you. And we do the same thing in our career paths too. Like a lot of us are in jobs, we're not in careers because we're decent at them. We get paid sometimes better than we could in other positions. And so we stay in it, even if it doesn't add anything to us. It's not consistent with the goals I have for myself. It's not going to allow me to grow in any way. But then I end up, I've talked to you all about that quiet resentment before. I end up kind of being resentful. Or sometimes I end up just not being happy. And I can't really articulate like why I'm not happy. Like I'm making money, I'm able to do what I want to do. But what it is I'm not being fulfilled. And that is because I haven't been honest with myself. And that's that self awareness piece about what I need that's going to allow me to be able to be in spaces where I feel purposeful, where I have meaning. And no, that doesn't mean that you're going to be excited about everything you do. I know a lot of us are not excited about doing those chores at home, but they still need to get done. But I'm talking about the things that make you who you are, the things that allow you to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, this is the place where I want to be. Or if it's not the place that I want to be, I'm taking active steps to get to the place that I want to be. And here's what I'm doing to be able to make that happen. And so that self awareness piece is very important. And again, that positive thinking, because again, what we think dictates what we do and how we feel. And so oftentimes, when I'm not thinking about myself and who I really am and who I want to be, then I'm going to be operating off of misinformation because it's not accurate, or I'm going to be operating from the perspective of what other people want me to do or that I think they want me to do. So, what are you saying, Tarver? What I'm saying to you is in order for you to decide, right, who you are as a person, who you want to be as a person, and if you are all that you have the potential to be as a person, there are a lot of different avenues where you can get that information. And I absolutely believe in you being in spaces with people who affirm you, who challenge your thinking, who get you to look at different aspects of yourself, who give you information about things that have worked for them. That sounds familiar. Essentially, it's a support group, right? It's a social support group. And so for some people, there are groups of brethren, there are groups of sisterin, there are mixed groups where we can have these wonderful conversations. But I do always encourage you, whenever you are receiving information, one, for you to check the source of the information. Because I know a lot of times people are sharing experience, and experience is a good teacher. But it also doesn't necessarily mean that that experience is going to equate to what is right for you. And that's where you need to be self aware and you need to be discerning. I also think it's important for you to challenge when people are presenting to you statistics, and making these very blanket general statements. And a lot of times you like kind of leave feeling attacked a wee bit. Then you need to really do your own research and think about, okay, where's that information coming from? And is this information valid in terms of the source of the information, but also is it valid for me? Because yes, I can guarantee you that you could go and you could find 15 sources of information that would say different things, and all of them will say that it came from a reliable source. And that's why it's important for you to be able to have that good discernment. Read. I encourage you to read, and that speaks to your intellectual wellness, because that's a part of your self-awareness, is you being able to read and see a variety of different perspectives and be able to understand how to critically analyze information, so that when you're presented with information, you just don't accept it blanketly. I've seen so many posts from people where underneath in the comments, people are like, oh, yeah. And what the original post was is absolutely not accurate at all. But because it came from a person we think is well respected, or we think has maybe some of the things that we want to have, we take that as truth. And I am a licensed psychologist telling you this information. Just because I'm a licensed psychologist, I'm not your psychologist. So it's important. Here's your plug for therapy. It's important for you to talk this through with your own provider and the people in your life who you know are coming from a place of love and care and concern and want what's best for you, and not to tell you what is your truth, but to be able to help you explore and understand what that is based on your needs, your values, and your goals. Okay? So being is believing in this case. Whoever you believe you can be, whoever you are pouring into to be, whoever you are being intentional about creating, that is who is going to show up. So make sure in your self awareness that you are nurturing that from a place of strength, positive thinking, accurate information, and also being able to self reflect instead of allowing someone to tell you who you are. All right? You all be good and be well.